Oh, sit down now. I got my knife.
Yeah.
You're the first thing I have in 37.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get started. The recording started. So welcome. It is January 14th, 2025. It is our 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that we have 4 commissioners.
Soon we'll be down to 3. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just.
So I think Amber will be joining us shortly. So we'll see here soon. So, but we have Commissioner Jordan, French, Kearns, and CUNY here in the conference room. So we are going to go ahead and get started because we've got. Good morning. I think. Oh, you say it's going to end by 10:30. So I look to the two of you as those reasons.
Like it's our fault.
Exactly.
We're the first thing we agree about. We're the fall guys.
So, so we'll go ahead and get started with Sean and Kevin. And Commissioner Walter Pisdale joining us. So here we go.
Kevin Norris, IT Director with me, and Sean Dimitrovich, Assistant IT Assistant Director. We are here today to describe our need for funding for continued Splunk licensing. Sean will be doing the presentation today.
Thank you. So yeah, like Kevin said, we're here today to request continued funding from CompuNet for Splunk licensing, and we will explain what Splunk is. It's kind of a funny name, so you don't hear that every day. So next slide, please. So we've had a storied history with CompuNet, who we get our Splunk resources from. Back in 2017, CompuNet, we contracted with them, and they helped us set up our first Splunk environment. So they deployed that in 2017, and we are currently engaged with them to upgrade that first environment with new hardware and new capabilities. The current licensing agreement expires at the end of this month on the 29th. We're asking for a new 3-year renewal, 1 year each. That would cover 25 through 27. I talked to them about a 3-year cumulative deal. They could not do that because of some NASPO contract language in there on an opt-out. So we're asking for 3 1-year renewals. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is Splunk and what does it do for Spokane County? So Splunk is our SIM, security information and event management platform. Very powerful software platform used for monitoring, searching, analyzing, visualizing data in real time. We ingest all our logs into it. So our firewall logs, our Microsoft Defender logs that are in the cloud, our on-prem Active Directory servers, all of that goes into Splunk. We can do some real-time analysis out of that. Provides dashboards, alerts, information IT. It has search capabilities all in one spot. So, IT staff can look at any type of anomaly alert that they get from this all in one spot. That gives us correlation. Splunk allows our cybersecurity staff, if there's any type of anomaly or incident, they can see where it started in the firewall. They can see where it hit our domain servers, where if it's moving laterally, anything like that, help us kind of squash that quickly. And it also keeps our web history for every single county users for a year to satisfy state mandates. So, and that's really what drove us to Splunk in 2017. This mandate came down. We did not have a platform to keep web history for a year. So this satisfies that as well. So next slide, please. So how's Splunk licensed? It's licensed based on the amount of data ingested per day in gigabytes. So when we started with CompuNet, we got a perpetual 20 gig a day ingestion that does not expire or add additional cost. But an additional ingestion of 100 gigabytes a day is required to accommodate all the data sources, giving us a total of 120 gigabytes a day, which is quite a bit. So we have a lot going into it. But as the ingestion levels increase, so does the cost. We figured that out. We were going through our upgrades. So next slide, please. Our negotiations started in September of 2024, and they pretty much concluded in December. Our ingestion levels were over our current thresholds. The vendor supplied us quotes with additional levels of ingestion. They wouldn't even supply us with quotes where we were at, what we were currently licensed for, as our ingestion levels were about 180 gigabytes a day. So, but with our With our environment refresh, we're down to 85 gigabytes a day, well under 120 gigabytes threshold. So we have room for growth. We want to add more stuff into it. Next slide, please. So annual cost for Splunk licensing in 2024, we paid about 48,000 with tax. The three-year renewal, 1 year each, would cover 25, 26, and 27. I've already got a quote for 2025 with tax. It's 58,000. We've kind of I've added 7 to 10% for each year for the growth for a total cost, 3-year cost of $192,147. This is on a NASBO contract, so we are getting the best deal we can there. Next slide, please. How does this affect our budget? Basically, it's accounted for in our 2025 budget, 2026 budget. We will put it in there. Same thing for 2027. But there's also some grant funding that we can do through DEM that Justin, our security manager, is looking into. We've received in the past to help offset some of this stuff. So with that, we respectfully request your approval for 3-year Splunk renewal. With that, is there any questions?
Interesting acronym. But on the renewal, it's not a 3-year contract,
It's per year, so we're asking you to approve for the 3 1-year contracts, 25, 26.
oh, sorry. So those have been negotiated and agreed to, but have to be split up.
Right.
Okay, all right.
No questions. Stuff we have to do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And take us to Rose.
Yeah.
Hi.
Both of us.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Good. I brought with me Maureen Dodro, who is our finance director, was finance director and left, and we talked her into coming back, which has been great. I believe today is a formality, because we already have the contract with y'all, but we were gonna go through, it's not signed. Well, it's not signed yet. We need to get it signed. We're gonna go through the TPA. We did send a couple documents. I didn't know if we're gonna be able to throw those up on the screen or not. And I also, we didn't want to offend by sending a TPA kind of historical presentation. I did include that, just in case anybody wanted to review. Maybe for those of you that are a little bit more newer to the commissioner's office, but how should we proceed first? We want to go through one sheet?
Sure. I can, but we're here as Visit Spokane representing as the TPA manager. We have a contract with you as a TPA manager. And so what we do is manage administratively the fund, and we work with a Spokane Hotel and Motel TPA Commission, which is made up of 5 hoteliers. They are the ones that basically decide on and recommend the budget to you and look at any applications for grants and recommend those to you as well. And that's what the contracts you have are, the applications from Visit Spokane and Spokane Sports. The big difference this year is we typically had a 1-year contract. It's very difficult for both organizations to forecast out further than a year when we're not sure what an allocation split will be in the following year. So the commission agreed to make this a 4-year contract at the same percentage split with 2% going into a reserve. That said,
I have the breakdown.
Mr. Amacio, it will require annual budgets and reporting requirements that tie back to those budgets. So it's not just a blank 4-year contract. It will have requirements. That is the main difference. Did you want to talk about the
Yeah, sure.
numbers?
Yeah, sure. As far as the numbers go, how does it break down in terms of the 2% lodging tax that comes through? Visit Spokane's contract is 63.6% of that total, and Spokane Sports received 34.4%. Just as a little bit of history, Spokane Sports segment did increase a little bit, but the commission is asking for P&L reporting every year to kind of check the ROI of what are we investing in and what's the return coming back on that. As far as projected revenue for 2024, we projected quite higher than what was originally, what it originally came through. 5.7 million was projected and the collections only came in at 4.9. Part of that has to do with, we had a new finance director who was new to the model, when Maureen exited, and now she's back. So we were able to clean up a little bit, but also some of the, business just didn't come through on the other sectors. We did well with, convention business as far as what I could speak for Visit Spokane, but as a TPA manager, we just didn't see the occupancy overall in the destination at where we needed it to be or wanted it to be for those original projections. Projected revenue for 2025, we are being a little bit more conservative with that. It's 4.8 million, and some change. We have a no special grants in 2025 funnel. The TPA commissioners have said they're going to pause on any grant requests from exterior parties through 26. And then as far as funds reserved, we see 2% going to reserve still, which is in the contract. So again, we're asking the commission to consider the 4-year contract where we will still have to present a budget, still have to present our ROI report to you. The commissioners have made it very clear that once they review a P&L, they still will discuss whether that percentage changes or not. If we're doing what we say we're gonna do with the dollars and everything's coming through how we planned in terms of Visit Spokane and Spokane Sports, and they would like to not change the percentage. But to give us kind of a lock-in of what we can expect for the next few years really gives both entities the opportunity to do better long-term planning. And as you know for sure on the business of the meeting side, we're doing contracts, 2029 contracts, 2030 contracts already. And people are booking further out now that the COVID is kind of slowly starting to not exist anymore a little bit. We're still dealing with some of that, but when we're dealing with signing room contract nights for groups, it often comes with deliverables that we've promised that we need to set from our budget aside into reserves to pay those when they do come out in 2029, 2030, 2031. Any questions?
Correct me. So Josh, you sit on the TBA as well as Visit with being on, I think we just did our assignments. So with Visit Spokane.
Yes,
That Josh is the one who then is on the TPA committee.
correct.
Right.
Yep.
So
I've seen all these numbers before.
Yeah, Josh has really good attendance too, so he's always there.
yeah, and then I think so I guess you keep talking in percentages and we've talked in dollars. So I guess I want to make sure that I understand what your expectation is.
The expectation, as TPA manager, we're asking that you would consider signing that 4-year contract, that the percentages of the dollars collected stay the same. Percentage allocated to Visit Spokane and Spokane Sports. So at that 63.6% and 34.4%. And depending on what revenue comes in year over year, the dollar amount would change. Obviously, we hope that we're having massive business and it's a huge amount of money, but for the dollar amount for 25, do we have the actual dollar breakdown?
No, we projected revenue at 4,870,000, and that's based on a formula we use that gives an average rate. It's the TPA is $5 per night. We come up with an average rate based on collections and a report called the STAR report that gives us occupancy. Then we work with the commission on what they're seeing on their books in terms of rooms. I initially did a escalator of I think 3%, and they said no, 2025 is not going to be at that, so we adjusted the rooms, and that's how we come up with this forecasted dollar amount. I know in the past your budget analyst increases the budget a little bit on your side in case we do come in at a higher rate and we don't have to go back and change your budget to get both organizations funded. But that's typically how it works. So we don't know exact dollars. It's a percentage of a forecast.
Okay. Yeah. I think sometimes it's confusing as to what the rental car tax is versus what the TPA
Yeah,
is.
this is,
how-
no,
Yeah, and
these
the
are
rental
hotel
car-
room nights. There's a
Yeah.
$5 assessment, which used to
Right.
be 4, but the Senator Holy ran a bill that upped it to 5, which we supported several years ago. So it's at 5. And then it's a pretty good relationship between Visit Spokane and Spokane. So I mean, they come together and agree on this percentage split. There, I've never seen any fists thrown or blood or anything, so. But they come to this agreement that's the percentage of the pot that's collected will be split. That 63.6 and 34.4.
And these are the total dollars that are coming into the TPA.
Correct.
Even though ours is just a small portion.
Correct.
The counties, correct? 'Cause we only have
Yes,
like
the
5
county,
hotels.
it's the city and the county
I
fund.
think we have one or two, isn't it? Wait, I don't think we have five, do we?
5.
How many hotels are in unincorporated county?
Oh, gosh, not a lot, but
Or
yeah.
3 or 4.
Oh, I didn't think it
Yes,
was that high. I thought it was two.
4,
Okay.
4, yeah.
Definitely between 0 and 5.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, the commissioners are saying they would like these percentages if our reports come back every year showing that we've been able to produce what we say we produce with the dollars that are being allocated. So it's still, if the commissioners this time next year are, you know, we hope they're not gonna try to do anything, you know, wild, but if they aren't happy with some things they have, you know, they can change it and propose something else. But we have also worked with Jim, Mr. Maceo, thank you very much, who has helped us, definitely helped me quite a bit as in my newer tenure here to Spokane. So this has been checked and vetted and hopefully ready to go.
Commissioner French.
So if you experience a year where your hotel accommodations see a drop in revenue, does that mean from percentage wise, so will the sports commission? We
Yeah.
see a drop,
Yeah, because this is overall
so
industry.
it's the same percentage whether it's up or down.
Correct. If we only
Correct.
generate $2 million in room nights, then it's the same percentage.
Okay.
The way it's set up, board members, as Josh knows, is that the TPA commission asks the sports commission as well as Visit Spokane to submit applications indicating how they will spend their resources when they get them. And then those applications are submitted to the Hotel Motel TPA commission, with Commissioner Kearns sits on. And then they review those applications and then they approve them with the appropriate percentages which each entity will receive in the following years. And so what we've done so far, based upon the Hotel Motel Commission's recommendation, is we've prepared 2 contracts, one with Visit Spokane, one with Spokane Sports, which they will receive the percentages that Rose and Maureen have shared with you. And then what we would hope to do is we place these on next week's legislative agenda for your formal action. And again, the agreements are consistent with the Hotel Motel TPA Commission's recommendations. And in the past, the Board of County Commissioners has also always recognized that recommendation because it comes from the city and the county and the hoteliers who collect the tax. One further thing I would say is that this Hotel Motel Commission, TPA, is formed by the city and the county. And the city of Spokane has always been very supportive of Spokane County being the lead in this regard. The city of Spokane, because they had more hotels, could have assumed your responsibility. But because of the expertise that we've had in the past, when we reformed the TPA, the city of Spokane agreed that the Board of County Commissioners would continue to determine how the resources would be allocated between the Sports Commission and other individuals who were interested in receiving the resources.
Correct.
So
I'll add just one little thing. It is an assessment. It's an industry approved assessment, not a tax. So the industry, which is our hoteliers, are asking the commission to sign off on what they have agreed to. And we are just the messenger and also do some of the admin work in terms of getting all the stuff contracted laid out. So it is a dollar assessment that they have approved. And it was originally $2 until the senator that you mentioned suggested during COVID that it could go up to 5. We got it to 4 in 2020. And then in 2023, we actually did ask the hoteliers to sign on to go up to 5 and they agreed. So it is industry approved and this is their desire to have it the way that it's structured. Any other questions for us?
Second, Mr. Zach.
Quick one, percentages stay the same between 24 and 25, right? So no adjustments to either Business Spokane or sports.
Correct, it was the
Okay.
same in 24.
And then with the Valley leaving a couple of years ago, the city of Spokane Valley. Is Business Spokane or Spokane Sports are they receiving any sort of amounts from their funding to provide the outreach, promotion, tourism, all that sort of stuff that you guys do, or is that just being done?
The
independently?
Valley is currently not, Business Spokane, I can speak, is currently not receiving any funding from the Valley. I think Ashley's the one to speak on what they receive from the Valley. They do, Spokane Sports does receive funding from the Valley related to some of the cross course and such. It's such a wound. I would love to still be working with the Valley, and we have a hopeful plan to kind of get them back to working with us, but we currently do not receive any dollars. So therefore, anything that is in the direct municipality of the Valley, we are not going above and beyond to promote. Of course, as a county member, we are promoting the county as a whole, and we have individual membership with certain hotels in the Valley that do pay us a membership fee, not the TPA dollars. So we work with them and we help sell their properties with that membership fee. And as far as other tourism industry facing attractions, restaurants and such, we do some work directly with individual members as well in the Valley. But we're currently not receiving any of the TPA. Yes, we do work with Liberty Lake. Liberty Lake, we do have a contract with. We were able to get a 3-year contract with Liberty Lake to receive some funding. And we also applied for lodging tax funding as well. Additional lodging tax funding with Liberty Lake. We have a great relationship with them.
I know at one time, there was an effort to try and bring in the two tribes and their facilities. Have you made any progress in that area?
In terms of them with some funding. Getting some
Them being
funding?
members and or contributing to the effort.
Oh, they are members of Visit Spokane and we do promote and work with them directly. They do some advertising, private dollar buys with us. But being the sovereign nation in terms of them being able to dictate whether they give money is on their own. We do have great relationships with them. We have, Phil is on our board from Kalispell Tribe and we've done a lot of great work in this past year with the Spokane Tribe Casino and their properties. And we do sell them. Even though they don't give what would be equivalent of a TPA dollar amount, we still sell their properties pretty, I don't want to say aggressively, but pretty normally to our convention meeting business as their properties that have the space to accommodate that type of group.
Okay.
I would say as far as Visit Spokane is concerned, we have a good relationship with the tribes and do some great partnerships with them and have some private dollar stuff with them as well.
I know I have received communication, had conversations with folks that are part of it, but have expressed concern about the fact that the tribes are advertised and promoted, even though they don't pay. And so there is some tension there
I
that
don't know who you're talking about. I think we're working on that guy as well. We have a good relationship with, yes, we've got a few hoteliers that have expressed direct concerns with us. And I think we do a pretty good job trying to keep everybody happy. We're certainly not favoring one over the other in any ways, but we're keeping a good relationship with the tribes. And the fact is too, like we do answer to some of the consumers and the travelers, not just the hoteliers. So we have to provide an overall destination lens, which would include our casinos and our tribes hotels.
Membership fees are also tiered for non-TPA,
Yes.
TPA, so their membership is at a premium.
Yes.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Our membership dues or partnership dues are tiered for TPA paying and non-TPA paying, so they would pay the premium rate.
Correct.
But as far as them collecting and submitting TPA, it's a state law that they are exempt.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's gonna take us to, and I think we Burgess on.
Hello, commissioners.
Good morning, Mike. Do we have a list or?
Think so. I
Oh,
think Ron brought it up there.
okay,
So is that, I'm sorry?
Gina emailed it out.
okay, thank you.
So commissioners, just from a general standpoint where we are in session, it is only the second day. So the things we're going to talk about today will probably be a little bit shorter. And the list will get longer as we move into session. Interesting though, there are a lot of hearings this week on some impactful bills, some impactful for counties, but just broadly impactful. Like yesterday, for instance, the bill that deals with the rent stabilization / rent control, that bill was heard yesterday. You probably read articles about that. Pretty big kind of controversial piece of legislation to start a session with. But mostly this week, hearings, especially like in the budget committees, are updates and then the House and Senate budget committees are hearing Governor Inslee's proposal that he released a couple 3 weeks ago. Which is pretty normal for that to kind of happen the first week of session as they just kind of catch up. And then also a lot of ceremonial stuff, state of the judiciary, state of the state, Governor-elect Ferguson sworn in tomorrow, and there will be the inaugural ball. So that kind of stuff's what's going on the first week. But there are a few bills here that I wanted to talk to you about. And one issue there on the Growth Management Act timeline extension. But I think for the first one, Justin pointed this out to me, and it looks like Justin's on there. I'm going to make him give you all the details on it. But from a broader perspective, I did some check-in on this bill yesterday. It's going to be costly. It'll probably have a pretty big fiscal note to it. And then given the budget situation, I think that makes this bill difficult, not to say that it won't happen. And it's kind of in response to True Blood and all those types of things. So I don't want to get too far out front, let Justin kind of give you the background on it, but he had asked me to raise it with you, and I think it makes sense. It is getting a hearing tomorrow. For some context, the gentleman that represents the prosecutors will testify against it, and I think someone from WASAC is going to as well. They just haven't signed in yet. So that's what I know about it, but please, I'd rather have Justin give it kind of the more detailed issues with that bill.
Good morning, commissioners. Thanks, Mike. Concern on this bill really does revolve around True Blood and the state pushing down some of the concerns with their ongoing contempt fines with the federal government down to the counties. Essentially, what we would do is cap the number of competency hearings based on county and timelines based on those caps. If a county in that process exceeded those caps, meaning managing and being able to maintain those, even though truly a lot of that's outside of our control, with Eastern State Hospital doing the determinations for whether or not an individual is competent or not. So the timelines would remain, but the caps on the number of individuals under competency restoration or been determined to be in competency trial and waiting process, that would pose a potential fine and risk to the county, because if we exceeded that cap, the county would be on the hook for paying a certain amount of fines in response, almost harkening back to the years of, so for those that were here for Eastern State Hospital fines, when we had a certain caseload we had to manage and we exceeded that, similar to that, the state would be pushing down this requirement to the counties to manage those on competency restoration. Despite the fact that the originating determination from the courts is not within our authority or purview to determine. It's at the discretion of the courts. So we don't know to what extent, but seeing as we are over the last 5 years, the increase, and I defer to Matt and the legal team on this one, but really we've seen a significant increase in competency restoration evaluations and requests. We would, based on the existing need that in our region, the use of Eastern State Hospital for Western State Hospital overage, and the fact that we have limited community resources, this could potentially be a significant impact for us to manage. which would increase the financial impact of the county based on the fact that I don't think we could maintain the cap below the threshold necessary to not experience fines. So much like the prosecutors are against this, most counties are as well. We want to bring this to your attention because WASAC as well is aware, as well as the other ASOs who are on the hook for advising and maintaining the system. It is not set up, be frank, to be able to have any control on the front end or back end to maintain the majority of these individuals, which would pose a risk.
So commissioners, just some additional background. Like I said, it's getting a hearing tomorrow in the House Judiciary Committee, Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. They changed the name. Representatives Abel and Graham are on that committee. So depending on what your direction is on that, we do have a couple legislators, local folks that I could relay the message, depending on how you feel about it, before tomorrow's hearing. So.
Justin, you said it well. We don't have any control, but yet they're going to push the cost down. So, which is not what the courts were trying to do. The courts were putting it squarely on the state with True Blood. So, yeah, I'd be in favor of, talking to Representative Graham. Who was the other person you said?
Abel,
Abel.
one of our new ones.
From the sub.
So I think just from a matter of course, commissioners, I think if you're going to be opposed to it, which it sounds like you are, Justin and I could work together. He'd give me a quick little narrative that I could just message to them and then run into them in the hallway and pass it along. I'm not going to get a meeting set with them between now and tomorrow, but I do want to get that information to them. So is that something that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. So
Education.
So, can I ask Mike, like, what's their 30-second pitch on why they think this is a good idea?
It's request legislation from Governor Inslee's administration.
Yeah.
It's not coming from Governor-elect Ferguson, and I guess it wouldn't yet anyway. But I think that there's some concerns about cost is the take I've gotten, and based on those things that Justin has said, but Justin might have heard other things about it too. And then I also think that there's probably some advocacy there for the folks that are impacted by the law, and the legislators that are involved in the bill are usually around that type of legislation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I think the overall push what they're using is saying that these individuals need help. No one is saying that they don't. It's whether the obligation exists on the state to fix this issue, which the federal court has said 3 times is yes, and they failed, and not being pushed down to the counties. Now, the state's position is the counties are the one generating these through their courts, but I would argue it's based on state statute for specific charges that we're required to based on the state. So again, the obligation I feel is they're saying they don't have a fix for this. So they're just pushing it down to the counties by managing caps, which isn't about an issue, right? They're saying don't exceed a arbitrary number of individuals with no evidence or determination as to how they came to that number. That's the challenge. And not only that, the courts have no control over that process and how they originate based on the current law. So I think the state's position is correct in saying these people need help, but they're saying that it's our responsibility then to be fined if we don't manage it without any tools to do so. I think that's the challenge.
And aren't the courts actually, we manage these courts on behalf of the state, not on our own behalf?
Correct.
Justin or Mike, do you have a sense, maybe it's too early, of what the mechanism might look like that would create the financial obligation by the county? What are they looking for in terms of payment if we exceed a cap? How would that happen?
Sorry, Justin, go ahead, please.
from what I heard, it wouldn't be enacted through any of the ASO. It would be a part of the levy with the existing fines just being towards the county directly. So I don't know, Mike, if that's general fund. I did not get a sense it would come out of any additional funds the state would make available.
Yeah, no, it would be a shift downward, to my understanding. So,
We're all opposed.
okay, perfect. Next on your list, Mr. Amacio, sorry if I'm going to put you on the spot here, but you had sent me some information about extending the GMA timeline. I just wanted to talk with you all about that and get some background. And assuming from what I'm reading there, we want to get a bill introduced to change that date. Am I understanding that properly?
Commissioner French is going to go first.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
So the state has identified.
Can I ask you a question? Does it have to? Does it go the normal legislative process? Like, do we have to find a legislator to introduce a bill to grant Spokane County an extension?
Yep.
That is
I think
how it
I've got
works.
those.
That is how it works. Okay, okay.
So the state has identified due dates for different counties for when they have to have their comp plans completed. And it's typically the end of June of 24, 25, and then we are 26. For both for the counties for 24 and 25, they asked for an extension to the end of the year instead of the middle of the year, and the legislature has granted it. Our planning staff has asked for the same kind of leeway, not that they will need it, but in the event that something should occur between now and June of 26 that could make that problematic, we want additional time. So this should be a non-event. The legislature has already approved it twice for other counties. There are 11 counties that are impacted by the 2026 timeline. I've talked to about 8 of them. I'll finish with the other 3 tomorrow night. But at this point, everybody has said, you bet, we'll support it. And so that's what it's about. It's more precautionary than anything else, and trying to give our staff the leeway to know that if they can't be done the end of June, it's not Armageddon. It will that we'll have till the end of December, like every other county in 24 and 25.
Okay, Commissioner, what are the other counties off the top of your head? I can probably exchange with staff too, but.
Yeah, no, so we've got the list of them. It should be part of that
Okay.
Draft bill, but it's Yakima and Okanagan, a number of other counties. We're the largest in the group.
Okay.
So I think Tacoma and Seattle have already, I think they're due this week or last year. I mean, this year,
Sure.
but yeah, it should be pretty perfunctory. And like I say, everybody that I've talked to so far has said, you bet, yeah, let's, more time is not a
Okay.
bad.
Okay, that gives me what I needed. I will go forward and get it drafted or work with one of the offices and get it drafted and try to get some sponsors, and maybe I can get the Spokane delegation on it. So.
Yeah, it's my
Perfect.
understanding. I've talked to a number of the Spokane delegation. They've all indicated their willingness to sponsor and stuff. So I don't think we'll have any trouble. Like I say, there's no downside. There's no economic impact. It's more about just adjusting an arbitrary due date.
Sure. Okay, I will get going. Thank you.
Question on that.
Yeah, of course, excuse me.
Do we have bipartisan folks on board in the legislature just to kind of make sure it looks good to the majority?
Yeah, I should be able to do that. I think a couple of the counties that I have not been able to talk to are on the other side of the mountains, not this side. But the LSC meets tomorrow night, and I'll have the opportunity to talk to them tomorrow night.
That's a good question, Commissioner Jordan. That always makes stuff easier, especially with the GMA. Like you said, Commissioner French, this seems like it shouldn't be controversial, but you know, the GMA always kind of turns out to be. So that's a good question. And that, yeah, bipartisan would be helpful for sure. One last one I wanted to call to your attention. It's at the bottom of the list. that you have, or the second to the bottom, 5060. That's Senator Holy's bill, but it would create a grant pool of funds for law enforcement hiring. I'm sorry, I should have sent you a link to that. Ron, if you could do me a solid there and pull that one up, the bill. But I mean, at the end of the day, commissioners, this is free money for you all to hire and recruit, retain law enforcement officers. We've heard a lot of rhetoric. I mean, just frankly, during the campaign from Governor-elect Ferguson about this issue. He acknowledged this in a press conference last week that he would be working with Senator Holy on this bill. Just want to get this in front of you. If you want to take a position on it today, that'd be great. If you want to give it some thought, we can wait till next week. But this issue is going to it's going to work its way through the process, or at least be on the table this session. So just thought I'd do a preemptive one on this one with the anticipation that it'll get a hearing and start going.
Yeah, I think, I think the governor-elect, I mean, that was part of what he campaigned on, and I'm hearing through our sheriff Waspik that he's committed to it. So it seems like be able to be on that and help that. I think the thing though is, as we look at additional law enforcement, as we all know at the county level, I mean, it means additional prosecutors and the court system. I mean, it has an effect on the rest of the system. And at some point we've got to acknowledge that otherwise we can have the law enforcement officers, but if we don't have the capability to get them through the system, then they just get, potentially ticketed out in the community and released. And so it's this, how do we start to finally look at the whole system and not just one piece that's going to cause the rest of it to be clogged? Just saying that out loud, Mike. You don't have to respond.
Sure. Understood. Yeah. But is this one that you all want to support, or do you want to wait to see more? Or I can, like I said, we can readdress it in the future if you want.
I mean, I think I'm supportive.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why it would be opposed.
There's not.
The point Commissioner CUNY makes is that this is just one part of
Sure.
Of the problem. So
Sure. And I wouldn't rate.
I wanted to throw this was covered on local media a couple of nights ago, but the way they presented it was that this was just for tribal government. But as we actually read the bill, everything says local and tribal. But so I don't remember which news station that was, but they got that a little wrong. It's for local and tribal, but yeah.
Okay, great. And then you might be asking yourselves, if you look at the bill list, the one on the top deals with a similar issue. That bill is authorization, giving counties, cities the authorization for additional 1/10 sales tax. So they're not the same bill. So that's why they're not companion measures, though they have the same title. So if you were wondering why I didn't bring that one up, it's because of the tax implications of that one, as opposed to the other one seemed like a little bit more of a no-brainer. But if that other one does advance, maybe we can address that in the future. But so just a little disclaimer there.
I say we support the grant bill, and then if things change in the legislature, we can always come back and tweak as needed, supplement.
Yeah. Perfect for me. I think that's all I have today, commissioners. This will obviously list will get longer, and our time discussing these things on Tuesday mornings will get longer as we get into session. But we're still in the very early stages. If you have any other questions for me, that'd be great. Otherwise, that's all I had for you today.
Mike, are these just bills that have been scheduled for a committee hearing?
No, Scott, some of no, but I should say that differently. Some of them, yes, have been. These are just the ones that are on my tracking list that I'm starting to flag as they're being introduced. And I'm talking to my colleagues. I'm hearing that they're going to move. I can generally do a pretty good job of looking at the bill introduction list and tell you if the bill's got a chance or not, in some cases based on the sponsor and the topic. So I don't throw everything on my list, because as big as your book of business is as a county, I could have, there's been about 500-ish bills, I think, already introduced. I could probably make a case to put 200 on your list, but I'm not going to do that and bog y'all down. But these are just ones that have come to mind so far, and I think that they've got a chance to receive some consideration over time. I'll start cleaning this list off, and then, you know, I got the priority column there. The two we talked about today, I'll move to the higher priority, and then that will be the top of our list, and then we'll, you know, work down on those other ones that are monitoring. But I tend to want to just bring up the ones that are going to be moving. And you're right in that if they have a hearing scheduled, they'll for sure be something that we'll talk about. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was more asking in line with the one that you had sent to Jeff and I
Oh, yeah.
last week or over the weekend.
That was a draft one that dealt with gross management stuff, correct? Land use
No,
stuff?
that was the sit and lie, public places, camping in public places, that sort of thing.
Oh, correct. Yeah. And so I would imagine that bill does get a hearing. I don't know if it's been introduced yet, but as it gets, so that it's not on the list because it hasn't been introduced yet.
Got it.
Okay, and then just so you're aware, you probably are, but February 11th through the 13th.
Yeah.
So
That's your flying, yeah. Are any of you making appointment requests for legislators during that time period on your own? And if you're not, and you'd like me to help with that, can you contact me individually? I have a person that does some scheduling work for me that can do some outreach to help get those appointments scheduled. And I mean, that goes for any time any of you want to visit. But just give me that heads up now, because, you know, I have these appointment requests out now for other meetings for myself, and I'm getting stuff 3 weeks from now with legislators, right? So they're scheduling 3 weeks out, 3 weeks out.
So if any of us want to have Mike help us with appointments, he's asking them for now. So we'll think through that, and by the end of the week, just have people reach out to you, commissioners reach out to you.
Perfect. Okay. As always, feel free to reach out whenever you need anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Have a good day. That's gonna take us to George and Chris.
Yeah, so I'll turn the time over to Chris on this update. Morning. So 2 quick updates for potential recommendation for next week's legislative session. In late November, I think mid-November, the YWCA was contracted with ARPA funds throughout. I think the end of that contract was the end of 2026. Because of the spending requirements of ARPA, they could not meet those demands, and we're hoping to reallocate some of those funds. So in working with Heather's team, they were able to unobligate about $662,000 from the YWCA. The board approved that in late November. What I am updating on is the potential gap between the funds that were unallocated from ARPA and could potentially be reallocated through CHG funds for the next biennial cycle, which would be from July 1 of 2025, June 30th of 2027. For reference, we currently contract with the YWCA for homelessness prevention support for victims of domestic violence. This would effectively be creating a set aside for continuing this ARPA services through CHG funding for the next 2 years. If that was something that the board was considering doing, that would be on the legislative agenda for next week. That would be about $50,000 coming from the consolidated homeless grant as well.
Chris, this was taken before the advisory committee to the Housing and Community Development Department last Thursday for their consideration, and they made the recommendation to bring it to you all for consideration.
Okay, so I guess this is where the CPA is like, okay, so how much money?
Yes.
What?
So
I need to see the flow of those funds, like how much we had already committed to through ARPA that we brought back, and we're bringing back through the general fund, because we're bringing back some of that through reallocating it through that way. And then, so there's still a gap, is that, I guess that's what I'm not understanding.
correct, the gap in the previously contracted services between the Y and the county. So the full amount there is There's about $500,000 coming from the housing costs for client capacity, $500,914. And then there's a $162,260 for programmatic and administrative support costs. Those were reduced from the original contract. So I could get some information from Heather on how those funds are interacting with the general fund. We are speaking for that $500,000 housing piece, which they were doing homeless prevention support. So they wouldn't be changing any services. We would simply be unallocating those funds from ARPA, which has already been done, and then reallocating those funds, of course, when they spend fully through their ARPA funds, to start after July 1st of 2025.
So, but we're requesting 50,000, will be coming through the other grant funds, not through
ARPA or general fund or anything.
I guess
The 50,000 or
500.
500?
Oh.
500, okay, because I think you said 50 to before, so,
Yes.
yeah, so I think that's where I need to.
So, well, I want, so, okay, so we clawed back of ARP. It's like a total of 770 about, if I'm seeing this correctly, we brought back 107 and then we brought back 163 of ARP because they couldn't spend it, but those were for victims of domestic violence, correct? And so now they're saying for completely different purposes, the homelessness, they want 500 to deal with homelessness, correct?
They would still be doing their same services, so they're still under that ARPA grant. They are serving victims of domestic violence who are also.
I guess I'm wondering why the 500 they're asking for seems completely unrelated to the ARP money.
I can answer the question.
I guess I don't know why we're combining the two together.
Okay, you left too early, Jeff.
Sorry, I'm headed to my school for a kid's presentation. This was one of the two groups that originally were awarded ARP that our legal department did not feel passed muster to receive general fund dollars. And so we reduced their ARP because they were not spending at a pace to get through all of it. But we were going to backfill a significant portion with this funding from Georgia's shop to make up what we think they would spend through. So it's a swap of funds because state law did not allow general fund for domestic violence prevention.
I wanted to clarify that the scope of work is the exact same. So we use the same, what they had applied for. The only difference is that we're pivoting from the original funding source to a different funding source, recognizing that this is a priority population that the commissioners had prioritized funding for. So just kind of helping out with the ARPA situation with some other funding sources that we have within our department.
Answer everyone's questions.
I think it does, yes. Yeah. Same scope of work. Different funding source. Yep.
So this was just, I remember when you briefed us on this way back that we were gonna look for a different funding source. Was this funds that you had already set aside outside of the RFP process? The last time we put out an RFP for these commerce dollars, or were these remaining commerce dollars that were not spent in the last? Just trying to understand where the money came from.
Yeah, sorry, Chris. So it's effectively, we're doing a forward commit. We're with CHG funds through this next biennium. So, so we're committing those funds over that 2-year period to fulfill this this obligation that we're making through these grant funds. We're using HHAA or document recording fees and consolidated homeless grant new language because we have to have a funding source to tie this grant to. And since we don't have this next round of CHG or consolidated homeless grant funds, the intent, and we've been transparent with the YWCA through this as well, is that we're gonna go forward with it as an HHA or document recording fee grant. And then once we get our consolidated homeless grant funds, then we'll amend that to put that language in there as well. So forward committing the advisory committee, when we briefed them on this last Thursday, we said that we will be removing $500,000 from that allocation to ensure that we fulfill this contractual.
What are we thinking ballpark that allocation? I know you said it might go down.
Yeah, likely will go down, expecting, well, Commerce tells us to expect a 20% reduction, so.
So what dollar
From what?
amount would that be?
Approximately $6 to $8 million.
Yes.
Okay,
Over the plan.
Yes.
so what if the YW, now, is there an agreement that, are they gonna apply again for funds, or they know that this is kind of what they may receive of that funding? Guess just wondering, like, are they thinking they'll apply again and get more funding?
And they may, yeah, and that was a discussion that we had with them is what does this look like when there's effectively a pocket set aside for them, and then for their other projects, how is the advisory gonna look at that? That was discussed, and that's something that can't really change how the advisory committee is looking at. I don't know if they are going to put in a new contract. I think they need to reevaluate their spending timeline. They also received a grant from the city. I believe that they're doing their new rollout of eviction prevention funds from CHHS. I think they got a big portion of that as well. So I think they are still kind of sessioning through what their actual spending is with this particular scope of work.
Yeah, it seems like they got a lot of different funding sources and they chose to spend. And I get why, because originally everyone thought they had till 2026 to spend down the ARPA funds. So they were waiting maybe to spend our allocation, but then we needed to get it obligated for sure. And so anyway, it may be that they kind of overshot how much they thought they could really spend of this, or they had other funding sources to cover the needs of victims in the community.
I think a lot of the service providers in certainly the last 18 months have been falling into a challenge with how they set their cadence on spending down funds, because it's not uncommon for a nonprofit organization to spend certain funds first before they go into the next, and then the next. They don't always just spend everything all at once. And so I think that cadence, particularly as Jeff and Heather have shared with you all, with changing rules and everything else, made it a little more of a challenge for them. I think they've been doing a great job servicing the population that they've committed to serving.
yes.
Just kind of ran into some changes in the game with funding and when that cadence hits.
Okay, thank you.
Something else that I'd like to mention is that it would be a contractual obligation for them to spend through the entirety of their ARP funds before entering into funds coming from the consolidated homeless grant. Any other questions on that? Awesome. Well, I can roll into our next item if you don't mind. That's going to be the reallocation of funds from the Yo-Yo Spokane project to a separate and different outreach project. You guys remember a few weeks ago, we unobligated those funds due to non-compliance with contractual obligations. A couple of the recommendations for the advisory committee is that these funds within the safety prevention type being outreach. And then we of course had the recommendation that we really want to make sure that there's a rural at least focus or outreach with these funds. I will start by saying we currently contract with SNAP, or Spokane Neighborhood Action Partners. They perform county-wide outreach services, and we're working better with them to get outreach logs and to ensure that we're kind of reaching all the corners of the county. The city of Spokane Valley currently operates a subcontract with Frontier Behavioral Health for co-deployed outreach teams with their city of Spokane Valley officers, police department, and outreach specialists to go out to provide services. They can only currently operate, I believe, within the city of Spokane Valley limits. If we were to allocate some funds to the city of Spokane Valley, that would allow them to extend to some of those areas that are seeing homeless camps and where services are needed and aren't able to provide services. This funding allocation would be for an additional 1 FTE outreach specialist, as well as a new officer or funding for an additional officer to provide 24 or 7 days a week outreach services for them. This would also be the remainder of the CHG funds. So unallocating those funds from the Yo-Yo Spokane opened up a gap in our allocated funds. So this would zero us out effectively, and we'd allocate the full amount to CHG throughout June 30th of 2020. I have got additional information, I think, on the attachments there, if anyone has any questions about the scope of work.
I'll also add to that, we had a meeting with the administration out at the City of the Valley last month, having a conversation about some of the needs that they had. So this was a really great collaboration between the City of Spokane Valley's administration and our department to find ways to be able to assist and ensure that we're getting the greatest support out in that community as possible. With also a recognition, as Chris mentioned, they have some perimeter areas that are some hot spots that they're just not able to touch under their current contracts. So this allows us to expand and make sure that we're getting those services on that perimeter of the valley boundary to help folks out there.
Source of these funds,
Consolidated Homeless Grant.
which the valley is part of. As we look to allocate those funds are funds that come in for the county and the valley as well. The city has, Spokane has their own, but the City of Spokane Valley contracts with us to allocate those funds. So. And this is just for through 2020, June 30th.
June 30th of 2025, yes, ma'am. So next 6 months.
Next 6 months.
And the actual project, if approved, the actual period of performance would start January 1st of this year.
So they're not really hiring a new person, they're just allowing people to extend beyond their boundaries.
Extend beyond their boundaries. I believe there would be an additional FTE brought in as an outreach specialist, and then they are paying for that additional officer to provide that I don't think they have 7 days a week outreach right now. This will allow them to do that.
Okay, so it's really allowing, they're hiring to extend their capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So would these funds fund the new officer? Or is it, you're saying the valley would do that?
These funds would go to the Spokane Valley. Spokane Valley would use, yes, these funds to pay for, I believe, the officers as part of the program. And I think some time and effort reporting there, as well as the outreach specialists.
And do we feel confident that they will spend all of that money on that program within that time?
I feel relatively confident. Yes, they have a really good outline of how they would use those funds in the next 6 months. I believe that they could probably spend more. And two, this is an already ongoing project, which is something that was pretty important to us. We only have 6 months to spend the funds, so to get another project up and going, that would be extremely big lift.
And do these funds, they have to be spent by the deadline, otherwise, so basically, but you feel good about that they can do that.
Yes.
Well, that's good. I had a conversation with Chief Ellis, I think, a while back about the homeless deputy outreach program, and they feel it's been very effective. Had lots of good stories about trying to get relationships built up with folks who are unhoused and getting them in to get IDs and set up to apply for jobs. So it seems like it's a really good thing as long as the money can get spent. So sounds like it will be.
Yeah, I think it's a great program and I get why you want to just invest, since it's a short period, in not a new program, but like one that's shown to be successful. So is part of the agreement, and I would have to read the fine print, is part of the agreement that they then would go into some of the unincorporated areas of Spokane County?
They have the flexibility. I don't think that's a contractual requirement. That's certainly something that I can put into the scope of work, is that there's an expectation that certain out of the Spokane Valley areas are incorporated. I have to work with them on the project side of that, make sure that that's something.
It just seems like, if there's some camps or activities that are in the unincorporated areas, and these folks are trained and it's not too far from the valley, it would sure be helpful to the rest of the county and other residents. So I don't know if that was, you said that they would go out, but I wasn't sure if that was really defined or not.
That's certainly the implication. I think that they are looking over those lines. I think they mentioned like Green Acres and those types of places as we know there's a camp in this place, but we can't go out there. So that's certainly been the implication. I can get a little bit more clarity on that, but that's been my thought is these funds would allow them to expand that reach.
So I think it would be great if we had a deputy and a program like this in the unincorporated area, but if this could, but since you're enhancing the capacity here, at least for the next 6 months, I think it would be good to make sure it was really clear that they could go into the unincorporated areas of the county as well and address some of these issues and help people get connected to services. So, since it's kind of like a little boost to the program.
It's also helping to give them some additional financial capacity because they're funding these programs with their document reporting fees, which have not been as high as originally anticipated. So this is also helping with some of their budgetary constraints to ensure that they're able to keep this program ongoing.
And I think we have co-deployed teams within Spokane County as well.
But not with the social service partnership, right? With Frontier.
No, with Frontier.
But that's for responding to like potential.
Right, they're not
public
specifically
safety
going
calls.
out to, but I think the sheriff, when they go to like DC and encampment starting, they do ensure that they do have people that are trained to talk to them about what other services are available and all of that. That's my understanding when they go out, if they're specifically looking at some encampment areas.
I'm sure sometimes a behavioral health specialist can be helpful. I know the guy who works out in the valley, he's more connecting with community services and housing and job and employment. And, right, the individual that works for, is it Frontier?
Yeah, so they contract with Frontier Behavioral Health to provide those services. And the officer is more of a, provide some additional security and enforcement of law out there, so. Yeah.
But yeah,
The main thing has just been the staffing from Frontier that
Right.
had a hard time staffing, so I think that we have to talk to the sheriff on it, but I mean, the emphasis has been to get where the need is the most, which is been the valley, I think, and so. But I think they all still jointly help each other. They just, the valley, they try not to go beyond their jurisdictional boundaries with the city of Spokane Valley Police. So.
And I want to make clear, the city of the valley has never implied that they would go much further beyond their boundaries. There's just some areas along the river where it starts to stretch out that they can see encampments and other sorts of activities that they need to respond to that there's some restrictions on. So this just expands a little bit, but not.
So it loosens the restrictions. That's what you're saying. Okay.
We also, I mentioned that in the forefront, we also have a really good relationship with SNAP, who is the bigger outreach contract that we fund. We recently met with them a couple of weeks back and are getting outreach logs now and kind of looking into the rural aspect of where they're reaching, and we need some targeted outreach. And kind of worked with them to be able to say, hey, we need to engage with folks in unincorporated areas. We have them as a lever to pull as well.
I'll follow up with them offline on my original question, but it's for another question. With SNAP providing the outreach in the unincorporated, it sounds like a good opportunity, if we haven't already done it, to kind of match them up with our sheriff department. Does the sheriff department know about them so that we're coordinating efforts? Might be a good little linkage in addition to the BHUs that we have out there. So maybe just good to share with the sheriff's department if they're not aware that we have SNAP for our unincorporated area for them.
So I provided during our meeting, or after our meeting, I provided some information about, I can't remember now, but I linked up with, I believe, the public information officer with the sheriff's department, if that's the title, when I first started here, and was able to provide some of that information to SNAP for them to get engaged that way. But it may be beneficial for two leagues.
Good reminder for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Were there other organizations that were sort of in the running for these dollars or were seeking these funds?
No, and we didn't put it out for RFP, given the short nature of time and the position that we were looking at was currently operating projects. So we did discuss with SNAP, hey, if there were any additional funds, what would that look like? I think SNAP is, at that point, was kind of at capacity with their funding.
So if these dollars have to be spent down at the end of June, so when does the next sort of round open up then?
The next round
Of folks to apply for these dollars?
Right, we closed that in one day, tomorrow.
Oh, okay, there you
So
go.
currently open, and then that will be for the next biennium.
Got
July
it.
1, 2025, for 2 years.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
The advisory committee will be meeting in March to review the homeless applications that come in. So we'll be coming to the commissioners in March, early April with our stack of homeless services applications that have been recommended for funding. The caveat being, we still don't know exactly what that consolidated homeless grant award will look like. So hopefully by then we've got an idea at least what to budget.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take Ted.
Good morning. I'm here to give an update on the crisis relief and sobering center. Ron, we'll just go ahead and go to slide 2 if that would be okay. So as you know, we've been put together a selection committee for the design build contractor selection. And today we're going to be seeking the award of the firm that we've selected to the scoring process. And so I'll just cover a little bit about it. The design build, next slide, please. Ron, the design build is an alternative delivery method just for review that allows the construction team to collaborate early on in the project, and the design and construction firms ultimately are awarded one single contract. If we go to the next slide, you recall from the dates that we were in last to talk about this, and I apologize, I got new contacts, so I'm reading it off of my paper here because I've got mono vision, and I've got close on this side and far on this side, so if I kind of get that.
I need to back up.
Yeah,
Just
no,
in case.
let me get closer here, so I apologize if it's a little bit fuzzy, or I'm a little bit skewed on it, so. Originally, we were here, we talked about, issuing the RFP, the last time we met together in November. In November, we, issued the RFP, we had an interactive meeting with all of the firms, the short list. We also allowed them to come on site to do a site visit. Ultimately, we asked for all of the RFPs to be returned to us by the 12th. And so we got those submittals in over our Christmas break, the selection committee, the 19th to the 6th of January, we reviewed all of those plans. So we had a nice little break to go along with it. We met again as a scoring committee, and we went through the interviews along with the scoring mechanism that I'll show you on the next slide. We arrived through the selection committee at the firm that we believe will be the best one moving forward. Next slide. This is just some of the scoring criteria that we used as we moved through the process. You know, the team's experience during the statement of qualifications, the project experience or past performance using you know, the local businesses that are otherwise not, you know, they're larger businesses to use as contractors. And then moving down to the RFP phase, we looked at the management plan that they put together along with some of their solutions and recommendations to their site visit when they were on site. The fee proposal we kept separate during the first initial part, but we're going to start the fee proposal review and contract negotiations next after the award. Next slide, please. We had 7 firms that ultimately put in their submittals at the beginning of the process. These are the names of the 7 firms that put in. for it. So we had quite a lot of folks that were interested in our community and being involved with this project. Ultimately, like I said, we moved to the top 3 firms. Next slide, please. We ultimately arrived with these 3 firms, B&B and BA, Bolton, and NAC, along with Graham, Bernal, Wills, and Zantec. Through all the interview process, it was pretty unanimous to the selection committee that we landed on Graham, Bernard, Wills, and Stantec, which is the firm that we'd like for you to award for us to move forward with into the contracting phase. Next slide, please. You'll see a resolution for the selection of design builder that I just spoke about, and along with the approval for us to move on to the next phase. And then right now we are developing with Hill International the timeline for the next phase moving forward. So phase 1 was getting us to this point. Phase 2 will be another project schedule that will go out, out into the future. So I'll be sharing that with you all as we move forward. So any questions on this? And again, this is to award the top firm that was recommended by the selection committee.
Go back to the slide, those are the firms that.
Those are the top 3 firms. Go back, Ron, top 3 firms. And then ultimately through the scoring process and also through the selection committee interviews, along with the site visits, we ultimately arrived at Graham, Bernardo, Wills, and Stantec. Just the experience level was there. Justin Johnson was involved heavily in this process, picking their brains to see if they had the necessary experience to help us with the design and put together the design of the interior, the operations. And they just shined above all with their experience level they brought to the table. So.
And experience in other
projects, design build projects, along with, yes, the interior operations, the mental health components of it, and building mental health facilities of type and shape. This will be the first ultimately for the state of Washington, but of type and shape. So.
Well, just some additional commentary. So this is now our third progressive design build project. Our first one is the Public Works facility. Our next one was Camas Meadows and Plants Ferry. This is the third one. So we're getting pretty good at it. Yeah, and we've got a good team that's been involved throughout each of those things, and procurement's getting very, very proficient as well. So we're excited for the opportunity for another alternative delivery project. It's been given good value for us.
So on this particular, I'm excited too, about our success with the alternative delivery. On this project though, just remind me, we're asking the firm to look at both reuse of a building or a new building or an addition, or I mean, we're looking for them to give us the feedback on what would be the best approach.
Correct. That's next steps to look at that.
And when will we have that information so that we can get a sense of dollars?
I don't know if you had the validation period. Usually,
You haven't had about, yeah. That
usually the validation period can be up to 3 to 6 months. So that'll come with when they work more with the contractor and schedule that stuff out.
Develop the phase 2 portion of it with the validation phase. Those answers will be fleshed out there, whether we use existing building that's on the site or it's new construction.
So give me just a time frame then that we're looking at in 25 and then in 26.
Well,
I would say probably mid this year, we'll have that answer back. And if just for recollection, we can't even begin to do any work there until the middle of summer, where Kyle's team will start to migrate over to the new public works building.
Okay.
So we're not in a rush. That's why we did this early to get our contract, our team on board. But knowing that we weren't able to now go and turn dirt right away, they have to go through some validation time period. We allowed for that. And then by the time we hit middle of the summer, we can actually start utilizing the site. We'll be in a position to be able to, before that, we'll be in a position to be able to say, here's what they're recommending we do with a facility or the location.
We're also gonna be looking at the RFP for the provider to bring them on to help us with the design, the interior design of it. Justin Johnson's working on that part of it, putting that part of it together. But June-ish, I think have some more answers for you.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked because we may need to figure out additional funds to make it happen. And so we want to give ourselves the time to do that, but yet not slow down the project of getting this going for the community.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think certainly between now and then, we'll need to have some more clarity around the funding, whether that's anything coming from federal, state, or whether we discuss the earmarking of the additional dollars on a mental health sales tax to fill that originally. So we kind of got to set aside in there. But if we get some federal dollars, then we'll we don't have to use as much mental health sales tax. And again, through the validation phase, that'll inform us as to what they're estimating the cost of the construction to be. And so we'll know. We don't know what our delta is right now because we have to have them go through the work to scope it and do their estimations and whatnot. So, but we'll make sure as they're going through that process that we're learning more. We'll circle back with the commissioners, give you updates on that as well.
So in terms of messaging to the community about the timeline, we're hoping, I mean, if all things work themselves out and we're able to fund what we need to fund to get the project under construction, we're thinking construction in 26.
Construction in 25.
And
I
then
believe mid-year, and then
potentially opening.
did you guys get
Early
into?
27.
Did you guys get into? I don't know if that
These are
was.
high level
Yeah.
discussions.
Right, I'm just trying to get a sense as we're
So early
communicating with
27.
legislators about funding, and so we know we have some sort of time frame that we're aiming for.
Part of the construction, like Scott was saying, probably the latter part of 25 into 26. So that portion of it, maybe early 27.
And then is there like licensing that needs to happen and those
Licensing with the
pieces?
provider, and
Okay.
there's several other things that have permitting, all of those things need to take place.
That'll be a separate RFP the team's starting to work on right now is for the provider. So that we're starting to do them in tandem. We wanted to get the contractor and the design team on board. And now we've with the commissioner's anticipated approval, the team starting to develop the RFP for the operator of the facility.
Jordan, raise his hand first.
It's exciting to be moving forward. I think it'd be good just to have regular check-ins on it. It's a high priority, I think, for all of us, and the need is urgent, right? That we're trying to respond to. So just making sure we do it right, but have all due appropriate haste with it, I think is important. I did get a chance to tour the current Crisis Stabilization Center again recently with some of the Whatcom discussion group folks, and just remains a very impressive facility that was a partnership of many different groups, including the county. And I think they said something like a 75% completion rate for people when they come into the treatment portion of that. Stabilization, right? It's a time limited thing, but it was just really impressive. But they did reiterate that the withdrawal management wing, so to speak, which is kind of the front door of coming in if you've got a substance related issue, is basically waitlist, right? So I know we have a piece of our opioid priorities that are about expanding immediate beds, sobering beds in the community, and that's good, but just hoping we can stay on it and continue moving at a brisk pace. So
Do your best. I'll stay on it. Yeah, okay.
Mr. French.
Do we know whether this part of the building complex over there and stuff is zoned for this use? Or do we have to go back to the city and adjust our conditional use permit?
So in last conversation, I've understood that it is zoned for it, but there is a boundary line that we'll probably have to deal with in the middle of the lot. But we're looking at those things. They're reviewing them right now.
Okay.
Commissioner, yeah.
So to Commissioner Jordan's point, I think this is a good topic for our strategic planning, just as we continue to learn more and update you on it. And once we start to work with the team and get some ideas of timelines, we'll schedule some more time back with you to make sure you have the most recent information as far as expected completion date, and same with the operator RFP as well.
I was gonna suggest too, we kind of talked about it in the context of legislative agenda. We've got our agenda, might be good to have an additional one pager on certain things. This is one where it makes sense to me to put together something that's focused on this project and kind of what the gap is that we're trying to fill, what resources we've already committed. I'm not gonna be able to make the fly-in, but I'm working on a different date to go over there, and I'd love to be able to have all the information at the fingertips. When we had the meeting with the legislators, there was good questions about the clientele and those types of things. So that's something I would like to have when I go over to Olympia personally. So
Yeah, I think between Mike, Justin, and Pat, I think the information's there. We just need to pull it
and
together.
it'll
in a
evolve, I'm
short
sure,
order. Yeah.
over time, but whatever the most current is would be nice to have.
And I think it's explaining too that we've already put funding into facility to help support the community now, and then with STARS as the operator, that was part of what we did to provide treatment options now and give the emergency needs now, knowing this is going to take us a little while to get online. So I think that's a good piece too, that we need to be in the narrative as to what we've already done and are doing as we get this online. And so.
And once we get the berms in here, the project managers come in, do it as well, introduce themselves. We have to ask them questions as well. So, yeah.
Can I get the slides though? I mean, what we have does not have what the teams were that applied, and then what your top three were. So there's those two slides that I like to get.
Okay.
They were.
They're.
Mine doesn't have them either.
Oh, no, Gina emailed us out today a new slide deck. It's not the one in the
It's in your email.
packet.
Okay.
Oh,
She
so
sent out
Okay,
I apologize, Commissioner.
figure that out.
at
We
8:30
can-
today. We got to pick one.
I apologize.
That was
No, which is fine. I'm just
Yes.
asking for them, but I think we gotta, because there seems to get stuff that gets updated.
Yeah, she sent out this slide deck, and then Mike Burgess's list of bills were in an email that came out at 8:30 today.
I don't know.
But yeah, so make sure you have that.
At some point, Pat was raising his hand.
I was raising Sam. Pat, you were raising your hand. Sorry.
Good morning, Commissioners. I was just going to mention that we've noted the request on the leave behind materials one pager, and we will make sure it's updated before the GSI fly-in. If anyone's going to Olympia before that, Jeff and I have talked from a previous legislative agenda meeting you all had about some additional support materials. So just feel free to reach out if there's anything in the meantime you need before the GSI fly-in.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the agenda is for Commissioner French, Commissioner Durham.
Okay, so I have the results of our thinking so far. These down. Make sure that John's got one too. Behind you. So we had Commissioner Jordan and I have met. I've met with stakeholders out there, and the list in front of you is the latest thinking as of Friday. Not to say that it is complete, but I think it represents a good point in time to identify folks that either I have personally talked to or offices that are yet to be filled. For instance, the EPA Region 10 does not have a permanent executive director yet. So I've identified a position for them in the schedule, but we don't have a name for that. And I'm told that there will be some movement with regard to Washington Department of Health, but I've not been able to personally confirm that yet. But other than that, everybody else on here has been personally contacted. There was, as of Friday, a conversation with regard to the West Plains Water Coalition, whether it should be Craig Bolasing or whether it should be Sharina, help me with the name.
And
Okay, anyway, the lady that came forward and testified about having 140 tenants on a well and stuff. So that will be, and then the Palisades neighborhood is in the process of identifying the representatives that are going to represent them. And then we've got a stakeholder for ex officios for the 6th legislative district, because that is, the West Plains is in their district and stuff. So that is the makeup as of Friday. And then on the second page is our latest thinking with regard to the scope of the task force. Explore the various filtration systems and present present and under development for efficiency and cost. Explore bringing a new source of water to the West Plains and work with the appropriate agencies to secure implementation. Explore technological advances on removing PFAS from the aquifer. Identify funding sources for filtration systems to include in-house or point of entry treatment systems, and work with the appropriate agencies in those requests. And then added on Friday was generating a census of impacted areas and the property owners that have impacted wells, and what specific, with as we've discussed previously, the only one that really has a definitive list of all of the impacted wells and stuff at this point is Department of Ecology. And the most they would reveal to us is that there's 259 wells impacted. But to be able to take, assuming that we're successful in getting funding from the state, we got to get more granular with this property has a 1-inch well, this property has a 4-inch well, and how do you navigate your way through that and stuff. So the representatives of Water Coalition indicated that they might be able to help in identifying that. So this is the thinking as of Friday. And Commissioner Jordan and I have not met since Friday, but if you want to weigh in on this and either concur or not.
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Commissioner French. As he indicated, we did have a good meeting last week, and I appreciate your collaboration on it. I think I appreciate your willingness to include me on the task force. We made good progress on the list of folks to be invited to participate. I especially appreciate the inclusion of 4 community voices or impacted folks. I think that's an important perspective. I just want to say I appreciate as well the willingness to invite EPA and the State Department of Health. As we can't force anybody to attend, of course, but we can invite folks to be at the table. It's a good perspective to have. I did concur on the ex officio. I did have a chance to speak with Riley and Lisette at the press conference last week, and both of them indicated that they would be happy to attend. They would be happy to get questions answered. And basically be a liaison or resource to the group. But because the body is, I think, envisioned to provide recommendations to different agencies, they don't want to be necessarily part of the leadership or active participation in that way, but definitely want to be available and helpful. So from my perspective, the list is looking pretty final to me of folks that we would invite. So that's good progress. And I'm feeling pretty good about it, but if the board has any feedback, this is a good chance to hear that. And then as to the scope, I think this is a good starting point. Commissioner French and I discussed maybe having an opportunity for the board to provide some initial feedback today. We chatted this morning about meeting again on the scope to make sure that's all discussed internally with our various departments and everyone's feeling like we're on the right track. I think my personal perspective is the most important priority for the group would be, or maybe the first priority in my mind, speaking for myself, would be to discuss and explore the more health-related short-term solutions such as filtration, and we've got that on the list. What funding opportunities would be out there potentially to help address those needs, and also perhaps who the appropriate entities are to take the lead on pursuing those resources. So we're making good progress. Love any feedback you have on the list or some initial thoughts on the scope and structure, but we're going to meet again, I believe, on that piece.
So I guess my question is, has legal gone through this?
Let me talk on that. So I did have a conversation with Mr. Macio, and this body is purely advisory. It has no legislative authority, it has no budgeting authority. It is purely an advisory body to us and or other agencies and stuff. And so that's critical because not only does it talk about the nature of the effort, but it also then would take us out of the requirement to provide notice for meetings, to have minutes, to have open public testimony and all of that kind of stuff. This is strictly a task force, an advisory task force. Is that a fair summary of our conversation?
That's correct, Commissioner French, yes.
Yeah. So at this point, that's how I'm approaching it, is it's an advisory group to try and inform other people about actions that they can take.
From a legal perspective, as Commissioner points out, as we know, if a majority of the board are on any committee, it trips the OPMA. But there's not a majority on this committee as it's structured right now. But the OPMA says that it also applies to a committee thereof under certain circumstances. And a committee thereof can have less than majority of the board on it and other members. And a committee thereof is subject to the Open Meeting Act under two circumstances, as Commissioner French has alluded to. One, if it acts on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. And case law makes it very clear that if the committee or task force only recommends to the governing body, it does not trip the OPMA. But there's two other things we need to be sure, as Commissioner French alluded to. If they act on behalf of and only make recommendations, it doesn't trip the OPMA. But if they accept testimony or public comment, and unfortunately, there's no case law that talk about that. So it's my understanding, Commissioner French, that this task force would not be acting on behalf of, because they'd only be making recommendations, as Commissioner French said, to the appropriate public agency involved. And it's my understanding also, looking at the scope of work, that they're not going to be, as I say, accepting testimony or public comment. And so that's why, as I understand it, Commissioner French, and as I say, there's no court cases in the state of Washington. Mr. Folsom and I have looked at this that really discuss what that means, Commissioner CUNY. I mean, what does that really involve? for instance, Matt and I discussed this morning, if you allow people to submit written comments to the task force, does that trip this? I don't know. We don't know that yet, but to the extent that we can eliminate all three of those items from the task force's scope of work, then we wouldn't be subject to the OPMA and all the requirements that brings about. And that's notices and minutes and all the things that we do now as the Board of County Commissioners.
So one of the reasons for having the 4 citizen representatives is that any information that would come to the task force would come through those citizen reps as opposed to, public forums or any other venue and stuff. Otherwise, you usurp the role of the citizen participant in the task force because you've created a venue to go around them. And so that's one of the reasons why the citizen reps are there to try and gather, collect, and bring forward that public information.
I think I was also, speaking for myself, envisioning this as an advisory body. So I think we're aligned on that piece. I think I was hoping that we could just have a conversation to try to talk through some of these functional issues about how it operates essentially at each meeting. So we have that OPMA piece to consider. I just think we need a little bit more work on that to make sure we're all feeling good about the operational piece too.
So if the task force becomes subject to the OPMA and all of the other necessary work that goes into that, then the board's going to have to fund that, because I'm not going to fund it out of my budget for that work. And the other part of it is that I'm out. I don't need another governmental entity to do what a lot of folks on this task force are already doing. And so, this in my mind is an informative, collective gathering of information to help inform decision makers. But if we make it an extension of the Board of County Commissioners or some other entity that puts us in a whole nother category, I don't have the time to invest in all of that work. That's a ton of work. And of every one of the task force that I've been involved in for 22 years, we've never done that. We've never done that. It's counter, and it's a lot of extra work, and it creates nothing but landmines for you to get caught on.
So one thing that could, I guess, I agree that I don't think the intention was to create something where we'd have to do follow OPMA. I do think it would be, have you thought about allowing people who aren't appointed, invited to the task force, could other citizens sit and listen in and observe?
Sure, you
Okay.
bet. Yeah, you bet.
So it would be open to people to come.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
But I think that the group would probably need to create some ground rules for how they operate so that I'm thinking of Commissioner Kearns and I have been, with these regional homeless conversations, and we kind of just created some basic ground rules of how the meeting is run and who gets to speak. And if there's people that come and want to listen in, they can come and listen in.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And, I look at it similar to what the community assembly is. The community assembly is a group of individuals that represent their neighborhoods, but they don't do, open testimonies and all that kind of stuff. Everything funnels through their community assembly rep. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've got 4 citizen reps here to represent and be the conduit. Otherwise, if you create a path that has people coming forward to the task force without going through the citizen reps, then you negate the value of the citizen reps. And I want them to be the reps, the people that will gather and harness that information, and then bring that forward as a group.
Just a follow-up question on the regional homeless comparison. Is there Is there a notice put out for that, or how is the word just gets out through the participants?
I think there's people who've asked to be on the
Just- we add
email
people to
list,
the
like
list.
minutes
By
notice.
request,
I
basically.
Yeah,
think
people
so.
can forward it. I mean, it's,
And are those,
Can you send Commissioners French and Jordan our last agenda, because the
ground rules.
it's
that were-
down at the very bottom of the agenda. It's printed what the rules are, and they seem to work pretty well. I mean, everybody sticks to it. Everyone's pretty respectful there about not chiming in when it's inappropriate, but it does work well. I
and
would
then
agree
is-
with
are
Commissioner Wong.
those,
No recording of it either, right?
No.
Correct. It's on Zoom, but I don't think.
Well, we
they're
might
recorded, are
record
they?
the Zoom,
Is-
yeah. But it's not required to be, we just do it to be transparent. Again, there's no requirements because there's nothing that's being decided at the meeting.
Right.
Everything would go back to every jurisdiction for a conversation or, yeah.
I'm just thinking, I mean, with this task force, you wouldn't want citizens recording. Couldn't be recording because you have to have consent to the state of Washington, so everyone would have to be consent to it being recorded, so. That would just be another ground rule that
Well, if
it's public
it's
official
a,
though.
well, if it's a,
it's not a public meeting though, we're not.
but if it is open to the public, I don't think anybody would have a sense that there would be some sort of confidentiality, that it would be private, so.
But that's why on Zoom, when it says, I agree to be recorded or, yeah.
Oh, that's the consent.
Consenting to it. So I mean, I guess that would just be the, you know,
No, I get your point. I totally get what you're saying. but-
So those meetings have been or have not been? I thought that at one point they were put out on YouTube or something
Yeah,
as a voluntary transparency.
Yeah, it's
measure.
just
Is that
voluntary.
true?
I don't, Amy,
Is that more when the regional group was led by Spokane
when there was
Collaborative or-
funding for the website,
Yeah.
then they were placed on the website, but now when Amy just records the Zoom and sends it out to anyone that attended
Okay.
the meeting.
Alright.
So there's
Okay.
not, I don't think it lives somewhere unless because there's no one, we're not paying for the website. That was something that was done
by a different
previous
group?
with
Okay.
funding
Okay.
when it started. But I can check with Amy on that, but there's no requirement to do that.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I just want to say I appreciate the comments. We just hadn't really got deep into those details in our conversation, so it's something we
Yeah.
can continue to work.
So more to come.
So I'll send out
But
those
At least
suggestions.
there's the progress we've made so far, and as Commissioner Jordan indicated, he and I will meet on Monday. We'll meet with Matt, try and put a little bit more meat on the bones and
Yeah,
shape to it,
yeah.
then bring it back to the board.
I just want to make sure legal agrees to all of them.
Tuesday, right? Because it's MLK Day Monday. Yeah.
We're gonna meet on Tuesday.
And my personal thought is we come back at the next meeting and with an update, and hopefully we'll be really close to being there.
Okay, so maybe not next week, but
That's my thought.
which gives you time to.
Yeah.
Math and all of that.
We'll work with legal too.
My only thought on as you guys work through the scope, is just maybe. This is a lot of things, so maybe prioritizing for the group, what to focus on first, and the exploring technological advances is really interesting. I mean, I think it's important long-term on removing PFAS, but that might be a pretty big lift for folks on the committee, like short-term.
Yeah,
I was just thinking maybe prioritizing so that the group
so
can focus in on, accomplishing some things within a year or so.
the conversation to date has been around, creating committees that will address each one of these. So your whole group is not trying to take on and bite everything, but with regard to technology, we already have an individual that's doing that. That's David Evans. And he can work in conjunction with a couple of the other equipment suppliers as they try and perfect that. So I don't anticipate the entire committee taking on each one of these bullets. What I anticipate is we'll probably have a committee around filtration, we'll have a committee around new sources, a committee about technology, and that when you look at the makeup of the membership, there's some pretty good diversity in terms of expertise. And so it give those folks that have an inkling or getting into the weeds on technology like David Evans, then there's a committee that will be able to accommodate that. So. But, you know, the other thing is that, you know, that I've discovered here in the last week is, you know, there are a number of counties throughout the state that are dealing with PFAS and the presence of PFAS, but the number of counties that are dealing with PFAS in their drinking water is dramatically less. Yakima's not had that problem. Snohomish is not dealing with that problem, even though they've got PFAS, it's not in their drinking water and stuff. So, you know, who are, and hopefully tomorrow night and Thursday, I'll be able to identify some of those other counties that are dealing with and struggling with PFAS in their water system. And what are they doing and stuff, and be informed by what they're doing as well. That's our update.
That's gonna take us to miscellaneous, and Scott, you had a miscellaneous item to discuss.
Yep, this afternoon on the board's legislative agenda, there's a typo on item 4. It reads received plan committee recommendation. It should read receive steering committee of elected official recommendation. This is just to set the January 1st as a hearing date. So when this gets published next week, it'll have that updated. Just a scrivener's error in there. Everything else in the resolution regarding steering committee of elected officials is active. So we have to pay attention.
And we did just note that from the draft agenda that went out to everybody to this agenda, that items 11 was taken off, which was the WSU extension with the Yorks Association.
What? What?
It was on the draft agenda that we sent out to everybody.
Oh, gotcha.
So that is
Okay.
not there.
Got it.
I think legal needed another week with it, so.
Just resolution.
Check on those beekeepers.
So, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, can you go back to the first, so for A says receive the steering committee, SCGM. And that's what you want it to say.
Or.
But just
the main
above it.
bullet should say also steering committee.
Okay,
not
got it.
that.
So when I read that from the dais, make that.
Yeah, the steering committee of officials. Thank
Got
you.
it.
But, and I'll note it, that it's a scrivener's error on that.
Got it.
So, like to share with the board that it is official as of today that Spokane County is going to receive another $50 million. $50 million from the EDA to support the tech hub out on the West Plains. And so it's a combination of money from the EPA or EDA, as well as matching funds from our partners, whether it's Boeing, Collins Aerospace, or whatever. So this will, these funds will be used to buy equipment and setup cost and everything. And we're still looking for some of the operational money, but this is a big win. And will help energize the tech hub to start pursuing what we envisioned it to do when we were looking for become one of the national hubs. So we still got money coming. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Who does it go to?
The tech hub.
Right, who manages the tech hub, I guess, I don't.
Oh, they've got an organization, everything that was part of the grant application and stuff. It's a consortium of our aerospace partners, as well as the property, as well as Gonzaga and Avista and everything. Yeah, so, but the tech hub is an entity of itself.
Very good, congratulations.
That's great. Was this, and that was, had they received funding? They didn't get that funding. That was last year that was announced.
We applied for getting the becoming one of the 10
Right.
national tech hubs. We competed for it, competed very well, but did not be able to get it over the line. And, but yet we were assured from our federal partners that you will get money to be able to pursue the agenda because it was very competitive. And so this is kind of a follow-up on that.
Excellent.
that
Great.
effort. So, yeah.
Exciting. Boy, we're
So-
just raking it in. Keep it going.
I mean, if you want, I can send you the announcement
Thanks.
from EDA. Anyway,
That'll be nice.
okay.
Yeah, if you could forward that, that'd be great.
So are there, miscellaneous, Pat?
Hello, Commissioners. Again, we'll have a press release going out Thursday morning about closure for MLK Day. So look for that. Be helpful information. Pretty normal part of our operations to send those out. The second thing I wanted to flag for everyone that Commissioner French has this month's Spotlight. It should air this Saturday at 6:30 on KSPS World. His guest is Pasha Pachenko from the Ukrainian community in Spokane, talking about the Slavic Chamber of Commerce and his personal and professional experiences and his journey to the United States. So should make for good TV. Look for that on Saturday.
Thank you.
You'll be a test on Tuesday.
Yes.
In Ukrainian?
Is there any other miscellaneous items to come before us this morning? Seeing none.
Oh, I just wanted to, I was suggesting to Pat and to Jeff that we just have a place on the county commissioner website where we post our federal and state legislative agendas, just in case we ever want to link it, send it out, send it through our newsletters, post it, or have others be able to find it easily. So if no one's opposed to that, they would just put a link to the PDF on the county commissioner's webpage.
Would be a good thing to do, just in case you run into a legislature somewhere that we want to pull it up. So
Okay.
that'd be great.
Thanks.
We do have one executive session item.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if that was a separate question or under miscellaneous.
Well, now that we're done with miscellaneous, I will look to you if there's
Separate
any
question.
executive session items now.
One pending and potential litigation under RCW 4230-110. I anticipate it taking about 30 minutes, no action. And the list of invitees, myself, Mike Sparber, Don Hooper, Ashley Cameron, Josh Grote, Randy Bischoff, Jeff McMorris, Scott Simmons, Jessica Pilgrim, Darren Lehman, Bryce Miller, Ken Moore, and of course the board.
Sorry, anyone else?
Pretty much everybody.
Pretty much everybody.
It's a shorter list of who's not gonna be.
That might have been easier.
Wow.
We're gonna go to executive session for 30 minutes. It is 10:58, so we'll say 11 o'clock to give everybody time to make the adjustment. So no action is anticipated, so at the end of that executive session, we will adjourn for the day, or for the morning, and see everybody back at our 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much.